Brothers and sisters, today we stand at the edge of a great dawn, the air charged with the weight of all that has been suffered, endured, and overcome. This day, called Victory Day, is not a mere page in a calendar, nor a fleeting occasion to boast or parade, but the long-awaited crown upon the head of struggle, the hard-earned song at the end of silence, the light that proves night did not prevail. For years, perhaps for lifetimes, battles have raged not only in fields and cities, but within hearts, within the trembling chambers of the soul, where courage wrestled with despair, where hope often seemed a feeble spark against storms too fierce to name. Yet it is precisely that spark, guarded by unseen hands and fed by hidden resolve, that has outlasted the darkness. Victory is never the property of those who merely stumble upon it. It belongs to those who have been forged by the furnace, whose hands bear the calluses of effort, whose scars are living testaments to wounds that did not consume them, but became the birthplace of endurance. When we speak of triumph, we must first remember that no crown shines until it has been dipped in fire, and no laurel wreath rests upon a head that has not bent under the burden of trial. Consider for a moment what it means to win everything. Does it not sound like a boast too bold for mortal lips? And yet here we are, gazing upon a horizon where defeat has been turned into memory, and the impossible has taken shape before our eyes. To win everything does not mean to grasp every coin, every prize, every fleeting possession of men. Rather, it means to stand where loss can no longer master you, where fear no longer holds dominion, where the chains of yesterday's failures lie broken at your feet. It means that the soul, having been pressed to the edge of surrender, chose instead to rise, and in rising discovered that the human spirit, when joined with truth, is stronger than any force set against it. Such a victory is not counted merely in banners raised or enemies vanquished, but in the quiet glory of knowing you did not yield, that through nights of tears and days of uncertainty you held fast, and now the dawn you once doubted has arrived. Let us not mistake this hour as an accident. The seed of today's triumph was sown in the soil of yesterday's pain. Every tear shed watered it. Every sacrifice nourished it. Every moment of doubt in which you refused to surrender was a hand shielding it from withering. The roots of victory reach deep into suffering, and no one who has not known the weight of sorrow can fully taste the sweetness of this hour. It is precisely because the path was steep, the stones sharp, the shadows long, that the summit is so radiant now. To stand upon this height is to look back and see the valley, not with bitterness but with gratitude. For it was the valley that shaped the strength to climb. We win not because the road was easy but because the road was hard, and yet we endured it. On this day, hearts may swell with pride, and rightly so, but pride must never blind us to the truth that no victory is achieved alone. The hands of the weary, the prayers of the faithful, the whispers of encouragement from those unseen, all of these form the unseen army that carried us when our steps faltered. Victory is communal, a tapestry woven not only by the threads of the strong, but also by the fragile strands of those who simply refused to break. Each voice that said, "Go on." Each heart that hoped when hope seemed foolish. Each sacrifice made in silence has been gathered into the fullness of this triumph. Thus, to win everything is also to acknowledge everyone, for no soul stands alone upon this mountain. But what, you may ask, is the true measure of this triumph? Is it the silence of our adversaries, the trophies displayed, the applause of multitudes? No, the truest measure lies in the transformation of the heart. For the soul that has struggled and now sees Victory Day does not remain as it once was. The struggle shapes it, deepens it, purifies it. Hardship burns away what is trivial, suffering strips off what is false, and endurance carves a depth that cannot be feigned. Thus, the soul that emerges on Victory Day is not the same as the one that began the journey. It is wiser, stronger, humbler, and more alive. In this way, the struggle itself becomes a gift, for without it, victory would be shallow, fleeting, hollow as an echo in an empty hall. But with it, victory becomes rich, substantial, a treasure that no thief can steal, no rust corrupt, no time diminish. To stand in this hour, then, is not merely to celebrate the end of battle, but to recognize the miracle of having been shaped by it. Every scar you bear, every memory of trial, is now transfigured. What once seemed only pain has become proof of resilience. Like gold refined by fire, the soul shines brighter for having passed through flame. And here, on Victory Day, you can look not only at the crown placed upon your brow, but also at the journey etched into your being, and see that the two are inseparable. You win everything not because you avoided the furnace, but because you endured it, and in enduring, you were remade. The world may see banners, parades, celebrations, but the truest glory of this day is invisible, residing in the quiet triumph of hearts that refuse to die. The struggle that shapes the soul finds its crown here, not in outward display but in inward renewal. For this is the paradox of victory. It is both an ending and a beginning, both a reward and a responsibility. To have won everything is not merely to rest in triumph, but to rise into a new calling, one where the strength born of suffering is now given as a gift to others. Those who win everything must also give everything. For victory that is hoarded soon rots, but victory that is shared multiplies. Think of it, all that once opposed you, all that once loomed like an unmovable wall, has now crumbled. The voices that said you could not, the doubts that whispered you should not, the fears that screamed you dare not, all are silenced. And yet, what is sweetest is not their silence but your song, the unquenchable anthem that rises now from the depths of your spirit, proclaiming not arrogance but gratitude, not boastfulness but wonder. For in truth, this victory is larger than your own strength. It is the work of unseen grace, the orchestration of threads you did not weave, the culmination of forces that carried you when you could not carry yourself. Thus, humility and triumph walk hand in hand, and the heart bows even as it is lifted. Victory Day, then, is not the end of struggle, but the sanctification of it. The soul that has been tested now knows what it means to be unshaken, and in that knowledge lies the greatest treasure. To have everything is not to possess all that can be held in hand, but to possess a spirit unbroken, a heart aflame, a will that has been proved in battle and now stands unyielding. You have won because you were willing to lose. You stand because you were willing to fall. You shine because you were willing to walk in darkness until light returned. And so, beloved, as we mark this hour, let us not forget that the struggle was the shaping, the pain was the teacher, the endurance was the path, and the crown we now hold is not separate from them, but born of them. This day is the harvest of all that was sown in tears, the fruition of every hidden act of faith, the visible glory of invisible perseverance. This is why the soul swells, not merely with pride but with awe, for we see that the journey was not wasted, that the nights were not meaningless, that the wounds were not in vain. All has led to this, and all has been gathered into the crown of this moment. Let us remember also that victory is not a possession to be clutched in the fist, but a stream meant to flow outward. If it ends with you, it withers. If it passes through you, it lives. The strength gained through trial becomes the strength to lift others. The wisdom learned in fire becomes the counsel to guide others. The compassion birthed in suffering becomes the balm to heal others. Thus, to have won everything is not to retreat into isolation, but to step forward into service, bearing in your hands the very treasures that cost you so dearly to acquire. The victory of one becomes the inheritance of many, and in this sharing, the crown shines brighter, for it was never meant to adorn a single head, but to illuminate a multitude. Do you not see that this day is more than personal triumph? It is a turning of the tide for all who watch, a beacon lit upon the hill declaring that endurance is never wasted, that hope is never foolish, that faith is never in vain. Your triumph becomes their courage, your rising becomes their inspiration. Your song becomes the rhythm by which their own faltering steps regain strength. Thus victory multiplies, like fire passed from torch to torch, spreading light without diminishing, growing stronger the more it is shared. To win everything is not to hoard but to give, not to isolate but to unite, not to exalt oneself but to elevate others. Yet let us not be naive. This crown was bought with cost, and cost is never forgotten. Beneath the robe of triumph lies the garment of scars. Every victory bears within it the memory of wounds, and those wounds, though healed, whisper still of the nights when strength seemed gone. This is not cause for sorrow but for reverence. For scars are not signs of weakness but of battles faced, of pain endured, of struggles overcome. They are the silent witnesses of courage, the marks of one who has faced the abyss and yet stands. To hide them would be to dishonor them. To show them is to proclaim the truth that victory is born not in ease but in struggle. Therefore, on this day, let your scars be seen. Let them testify that victory does not belong to the untested but to the tried, not to the unscarred but to the marked, not to those who floated easily but to those who climbed, stumbled, and rose again. For each scar, each story, each wound turned to strength, is now part of the crown itself. They are not blemishes but jewels, not disfigurements but adornments. For they speak of what was endured, and of the triumph that now crowns it. And if ever the day comes when the weight of the crown feels heavy, remember that it rests upon a head made strong by burden, that it shines because of nights when all seemed dark, that it endures because of trials that once seemed endless. The crown is no ornament of vanity, but a reminder of victory's cost, a sacred symbol of what it took to stand here now. Hold it, then, with reverence, for it is more than gold or laurel. It is the embodiment of every struggle, every tear, every moment of perseverance. So here we stand, at the threshold of triumph, the banner of victory unfurled above us, the sound of joy ringing around us, the weight of the crown pressing upon us. And in this hour we see that the struggle which once seemed endless was shaping us all along, that the nights which once felt barren were sowing seeds for this harvest, that the path which once felt cruel was guiding us toward this summit. And even now, as the crown is set and the air is filled with triumph, let us confess with honesty that there were hours when we doubted we would see this day. There were nights when shadows mocked us, when silence felt louder than thunder, when hope seemed a frail candle trembling against the storm. Yet it is precisely because we walked through such nights that this dawn is radiant beyond measure. Had the road been straight and smooth, the summit would not dazzle. Had the path been easy, the peak would not humble. But because the way was hard, because the weight was great, because the tears were many, this moment is now hallowed, clothed in a majesty that only suffering can bestow. For victory is not cheap, nor should it be. That which costs little is treasured little, but that which demands everything is cherished forever. And this day, called Victory Day, has cost everything. It has cost sweat poured like rain upon the earth. It has cost tears shed in hidden corners. It has cost strength pushed beyond its limits and faith stretched to its breaking point. Yet out of such cost arises a prize beyond price, the unbreakable certainty that nothing endured has been in vain. All has been gathered, all has been redeemed, all has been woven into the crown that now rests upon the brow of the victorious. This is why victory is not a fleeting emotion, but a solemn reality. Emotions rise and fall like waves upon the shore, but victory, once forged, is carved into the very being. It is not simply that you feel triumphant, but that you are triumphant. It is not merely that joy floods your heart in this hour, but that your very soul has been altered by the journey, reshaped by the fire, enlarged by the weight it bore. You will never be as you once were, for victory has become part of your very nature. And here lies the deeper mystery. The struggle was not an obstacle to victory, but the road to it. Without the weight, there would be no strength. Without the fire, there would be no gold. Without the night, there would be no dawn. What once felt like opposition was in truth preparation. What once seemed like cruelty was in truth chiseling. What once appeared as delay was in truth the necessary shaping of the soul. This is why the crown rests firmly now, because the foundation beneath it was laid in trial. And so the soul can wear it without fear, for it is no fragile ornament, but the rightful seal of endurance. Do not think, then, that this day is an end. It is not a closing chapter but the opening of a new one. For victory calls not to idleness but to stewardship, not to boasting but to building, not to rest but to responsibility. The struggle shaped you, but the crown now summons you. It is not only a reward but a charge, a declaration that you have been found worthy to bear not only triumph, but the weight that triumph demands. To have won everything is not to retreat into ease, but to rise into duty, carrying the lessons of suffering into the work of creation, carrying the strength of endurance into the service of others, carrying the humility of struggle into the leadership of victory. And so we see that the crown is both gift and task, both reward and calling. To win everything is not to grasp but to give, not to end but to begin, not to finish but to be launched into a greater journey. The soul that has triumphed must now become a guide for others, the light upon their path, the voice that whispers, "Endure, for dawn will come." For what is the worth of victory if it dies with you? Its fullness is found only when it flows outward, multiplying itself in the lives it touches, spreading the flame it kindled in you into fires that will never be quenched. And now we must face the truth with sober joy. Victory Day is not the end of striving, but the birth of a higher calling. To imagine that the summit is the conclusion is to misunderstand the mountain. For though you have reached this peak, there rises yet another beyond it, and from its summit still another, until the horizon itself becomes an unending procession of heights calling you upward. Triumph is not the final word, but the opening sentence of a new chapter. If you would honor the crown you now bear, you must rise into the responsibility it demands, for victory carries within itself not only joy but obligation. The soul that has endured trial and prevailed has been entrusted with more than its own reward. It has been given a stewardship. You stand now as one who has proven strength, and with proven strength comes the duty to use it rightly. The crown is not only a symbol of what you have achieved, but a summons to what you must yet become. You have been tempered like steel in the fire of adversity, and steel is not forged to rest in silence, but to be wielded for purpose greater than itself. This is why victory never allows idleness. It sends you forth into new battles, not always with sword and shield, but with wisdom, with compassion, with the unyielding courage of one who knows what endurance can accomplish. Consider this. The day of triumph reveals more than your own story. It sets a precedent for others who will walk behind you. For victory is never private. It is a flame whose light cannot be hidden. Others watch, others learn, others take heart. And if they see you shrink back into comfort, clutching your crown in fear of losing it, they will think victory is a thing to be hoarded, a treasure to be buried. But if they see you step forward boldly, using triumph as a platform for greater service, they will understand that victory is not an end, but a beginning. They will rise because you have risen. They will strive because you have endured. They will hope because you have triumphed. So then, what is this higher calling to which Victory Day summons us? It is to build, to plant, to heal, to lift, to guide. For the strength that carried you to triumph was never meant for you alone. It was given that others might find shelter in its shade, that others might drink from its well, that others might rest in its light. If you stop at the crown, you waste the journey. If you use the crown to bless, to lead, to serve, then the journey finds its true meaning. To win everything is not merely to secure your own joy, but to become a fountain of joy for others. And yet, let us not imagine that this higher calling will be without trial. For every summit achieved prepares the soul for a greater ascent. The challenges that lie before you will not be the same as those behind, but they will be no less demanding. In fact, they may require even more. For it is one thing to fight when you are unknown and another to remain steadfast when the world looks upon you. It is one thing to endure when you are weak, and another to be humble when you are strong. The trials ahead may not wear the face of suffering, but of responsibility. They may not come as storms but as temptations of ease, the subtle decay of pride, the creeping slumber of complacency. These battles are no less real, and perhaps they are more dangerous, for they can undo victory without a sound. Therefore, you must remain vigilant. The crown is not armor. It does not protect you from new trials. It is a reminder of what you have overcome, but it is also a call to keep walking. You must guard the flame within. Feed it with gratitude, strengthen it with discipline, direct it with vision. For if you do not, the very triumph you now celebrate may become the seed of downfall. Many have won the prize, but not all have borne it well. Some have stumbled beneath the weight of their own glory. Some have drowned in the abundance they sought. Some have allowed victory to rot into vanity. Let that not be your story. Let your crown not be a burden of pride, but a banner of service. For the highest calling of victory is to turn strength into stewardship. It is to look beyond yourself and see the needs of the many. You did not endure trial merely to stand upon a pedestal. You endured to learn compassion for those who still struggle. You did not overcome merely to glory in triumph. You overcame to become a guide for others on the same road. To have won everything is to hold in your hands the power to shape the lives around you. And the question now is not whether you have strength, but whether you will use it well. And here, perhaps, lies the greatest paradox of all. True victory is not measured by how much you hold, but by how much you give away. The crown shines most brightly when it reflects light onto others. The laurel is most secure when it adorns a life spent in service. The day of triumph becomes most meaningful when it becomes a source of triumph for others. And so the higher calling of Victory Day is this: to take what you have won and transform it into a legacy that outlives you, a foundation upon which others can build, a flame that burns long after your own voice has fallen silent. Think then of the generations to come. They will not remember you merely for what you won, but for what you did with what you won. They will not honor you simply for standing victorious, but for how your victory shaped the world they inherit. This is the higher calling, the solemn charge that rests upon the crowned head, to live not for the crown, but for the kingdom it represents, not for the triumph, but for the transformation it enables. Victory Day is not the end of striving, but the birth of a higher calling.